Hi, thanks for stopping by. I wanted to show you how I make sauerkraut. Now, what I did was I picked up a cabbage. You can get a cabbage at a farmer's market or a grocery store. And this one I picked up, and it's about 8 pounds, about an 8 pound cabbage. And I want to show you exactly what it takes. It's super easy. It's only two ingredients. It's essentially the cabbage and salt. So you need a big bowl, and you need a few glass jars. And as you can see, I have a few there. I have two big, I think those are about a half gallon. And then I have like a big quart size. And there's a few things you need to allow the gas to escape as it ferments. And you see I have metal lids, and I have these little vents. So I have metal vents that have like a contraption that sits on top that vents the gases out through the top. And it'll make a lot of liquid, and you're going to see how that happens. And this little contraption, as you can see, it has holes at the top, and it's got a little thing that comes off at the top, and the air comes up. As the liquid rises, the air comes up and escapes through the top. So you need that when you're making sauerkraut, because it's basically got to sit out on the table for about 3 weeks to a month, just sitting outside. You need to keep it submerged in its own liquid, and those are like weights that I use, glass weights. In this case, I think I only used one glass weight, but they fit really nicely into the jars. And the whole idea is to keep the sauerkraut submerged in its liquid. So as you can see, when we do this, we're going to be using salt. And the salt is going to be used specifically for basically sweating out the cabbage. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to take the cabbage and I'm going to slice it into these really thin ribbons that are going to go in the big bowl, and they're going to be used basically for sauerkraut. But first I need to take off the stem and then the core. So before I do this, I want to take off the outer leaves. Now, the first few leaves are kind of gross, so I don't really need those, but they're a nice, I guess, a package. They keep the cabbage nice and clean, and those I can discard. But then what I want to do is I want to just use the cleaner leaves, and those are going to be used to seal the tops of the jars. Once the cabbage is sliced up and put in the jars, these leaves are going to be used to plop down on top and keep that sauerkraut submerged nicely underneath the liquid. So we want to preserve those if we can. So first, when I want to cut this apart, I need to take out the core. The core is that tough piece that's down there in the middle. So I'm going to use a sharp knife, and I essentially just make a cut to remove that out of the center of the cabbage before I start slicing it up. Once that's removed, then what I'm going to do is I'm going to take each piece, each half, and I'm going to cut it in half so it's easier to manage, because again, like I said, this particular cabbage is 8 pounds, so it's pretty big. So I don't want to make it too difficult. And I have a really big bowl, and you're going to see I actually just about ran out of room on this bowl. But I'm going to cut these really, really thin pieces. As you can see, they make up these little ribbons of cabbage, and I'm going to slice them up, and I'm going to be collecting them in the bowl. And I'm going to do this with all the heads of cabbage. So what we have in this, all the pieces that I have. As you can see, this made a lot of cabbage, a lot of sauerkraut, just the half of the cabbage, almost filled it to the top. So we now have to repeat that whole process with the second half. So I'm going to do the same thing as I did with the last piece, is I'm going to take out that core, and then I'm going to get to slicing it up. Now, after that whole cabbage is cut up into tiny little ribbons, as you can see, it barely fits in the bowl. I'm going to add 4 tablespoons of salt. Now, the rule of thumb is for whatever you use, for whatever you have in cabbage, it's half the amount in tablespoons for salt. So I had an 8-pound cabbage, so I used 4 tablespoons of salt. So a 4-pound cabbage would be 2 tablespoons of salt, so you get the idea. And the whole idea is for this cabbage to sweat. So as it sweats, it's going to be releasing a lot of moisture. So I'm trying to get the salt down inside the cabbage, but it's going to do the work. I don't really have to do much more than just add it. I probably could have put it all on the top and it would work its way down. So we're going to be, once I add the 4 tablespoons of salt, I'm just going to kind of push it down a little bit, kind of crunch it with my hands to kind of mush it up a bit. And then I'm going to cover it and leave it doing what it's doing for about every 15 minutes or so. I'm going to check on it. It probably will take about an hour to get to a point where I'm ready to put them in the jars, because you really want to get a lot of water in the bottom of the bowl, and I'll show you what that looks like when we get there. But for now, I'm going to be checking it about every 15 minutes or so. So after about 15 minutes, I took off the top to check, and you can see it's already starting to shrink. All the liquid is starting to come out of it. You can see my hand is all wet, and it's still very firm and crunchy. And so I crunch it in. I'm actually holding the camera, but normally you could use 2 hands, and I just move it around, crunch it, try to pull and rotate it, just whatever I can do to soften it up a bit. And you can see it leaves a lot of liquid, so it's already kind of doing what it needs to do. And then I'm going to cover it, and then in another 15 minutes we'll come back and check it. So it's been about 40 minutes, and you can see it's really shrunk a lot. And all the water is building, and you can look in there and see we have a lot of water building up, which is great. That's going to be a great fermenting environment for my cabbage. So once, I guess we have another couple of minutes, and then we should be ready to pack it into our jars and ready for it to start the fermentation process. All right, so once we have it ready to go, then what I need to do is I need to kind of prepare and get my stuff ready. So I'm going to get my jars, but you can see there's a lot of water in there, so it's all ready. It's ready to be packed into jars. I think the time is about a total of an hour. Like again, checking it every 15 minutes. So now what I'm going to do is put it in jars. So I'm going to use the big jar and probably a smaller jar. I don't think I'll need 2 big jars for this particular batch. But I have this wooden, it's like a wooden mallet almost that I can push down. I want to try to keep the sauerkraut pressed down and underneath liquid. And And normally you can get a funnel. That'll be easier to pack this cabbage. I don't have a funnel, but a funnel would probably have been a lot easier. But you can probably pick one up. But right now, because the mouth of this jar is pretty big, it's easy enough for me to get the stuff in. So you're going to pack your cabbage down into the jar until you get about a third of the way full. And then what you're going to do is you're going to press it with your wooden mallet to try to get as much cabbage as possible submerged under the liquid. Now, I didn't add water. This was not anything I added. This is strictly liquid from the sauerkraut or from the cabbage. So the cabbage is making this liquid. I didn't add any liquid to this. Okay, but that's what you want. That's going to be a good fermentation. So I will continue to do this. I'll put in a bunch of cabbage and then I'll press it down, a bunch of cabbage, and I'll repeat this process until we're right at the top. Okay, so now that I'm at the very, very top, you can see the water is rising way above the cabbage, and that's what you want. And I'm going to be using these cabbage leaves to protect the cabbage, again, to keep it protected from air. We don't want air to hit the cabbage, and we want it to remain submerged underneath the liquid of the cabbage. So you can just snugly tuck in a cabbage leaf just to make sure it's nice and tight underneath. If that's submerged under liquid, that's good too. You want to just make sure you have as much of an airlock as possible. You're going to let the gas escape, but you just want to make sure you protect your cabbage. I also like to clean the lids. You want to clean the lips and of the jars to get away any floaters. If you do find you have little floaters or little cabbage pieces in the liquid that's rising above, just pull them off and get rid of them because you don't want them to attract any kind of bacteria. Now for the cap, I'm using that little metal lid, and it has a little vent hole. So all I do is just pop it on top, and I have my little airlock device that I'm going to put right on top. That you'll actually see the fluid will rise up from that, and the gas will be released, and the liquid will actually rise. Now I put it in a jar, in a little pan, because it will overflow. At times you'll see it kind of rise up and it'll come out, and you don't want it on your counter. So you can even take the liquid juice that lands in the little pan and you can save that in the refrigerator in case your sauerkraut becomes dry for whatever reason. So with the smaller jar, this is what I had left from the cabbage. That's as much as I was able to get, so I have plenty of room in this jar. So I'm going to basically do the same thing. I'm going to take my cabbage leaf and I want to snugly tuck it inside the jar, which is above the cabbage. And of course it can be submerged under the liquid because, again, that's the goal, is to keep the air from touching the cabbage that's going to become sauerkraut. We need to have it submerged for it to ferment correctly. And then I'm going to use the glass weights for this because we want to keep the cabbage down and submerged. So since we have the room, we can use the little glass weight. Okay. And then for this particular airlock on top, I have the little twist cap, but I have a rubber, it's like a little silicone, almost like a nipple that has a little hole, and that will also help the air escape. So I will put that on top, and that also helps the air escape once we have the fermentation process underway. Make sure everything is nice and clean, and I pop it in the container, and this will sit on the counter for 3 to 4 weeks. And then in 3 to 4 weeks, the cabbage will be ready to use. Now you can certainly use this once it is ready, after about a month, you can put it in the refrigerator and it'll last probably for a few weeks at least. So you can use it basically I can use it all summer long, and it's fantastic. So I hope you enjoyed this. I hope this was a little information for you. It's a real easy project and a fun project. It's great to do with kids, and you got to wait a little while, but it's well worth the wait. I hope you enjoyed it. Thanks for watching. Have a great day. So long.